There are many places with extraordinary realities, but you probably never imagined that a country could emerge from one of the greatest natural disasters in human history. And here, to prevent a man from having multiple wives, the government created a series of taxes that actually encouraged more men to take more than one wife. In this new video from Mundo Sem Filtro, we will take a closer look at Bangladesh, one of the most remote and unknown countries in the world, yet at the same time one of the most extraordinary on the planet, Bangladesh. It's one of the most densely populated and polluted countries in the world, with street stalls that will surprise you, and which you'd think twice about stopping at to eat. In a country where a man can have more than 4 wives at the same time, as long as he can support them, even though the government has tried to prevent this in a surprising way. Bangladesh, one of the most densely populated, polluted, and filthy countries in the world, is also home to extraordinary curiosities. For example, it is one of the largest clothing exporters globally, has the largest mangrove forest on the planet, and is the location of one of the greatest tragedies in history. Although it might seem strange, this tragedy contributed to the emergence of the nation. Stay tuned and don't miss this video, because we guarantee discovering Bangladesh with us will surprise you. Let's begin. Bangladesh is one of the most fertile regions on the planet. This reality is linked to the fact that it is home to one of the areas with the highest biodiversity and uniqueness in the world, known as the Sundarbans. The Sundarbans form the largest mangrove forest in the world, extending across Bangladesh and the Indian state of West Bengal. This vast mangrove area is not only a vital green lung for the region but also a crucial ecosystem for the survival of numerous species. This extraordinary and unique place is home to the famous Bengal tiger, an iconic species facing extinction. In addition to tigers, the Sundarbans also host a large variety of wildlife, such as crocodiles, Ganges dolphins, and an incredible diversity of birds and fish. The mangroves provide a unique habitat, offering shelter and a plentiful food source for these species. The interdependence between the flora and fauna of the Sundarbans makes this ecosystem extraordinarily resilient but also vulnerable to environmental changes. Its geographic location, at the confluence of major rivers and near the sea, makes it particularly susceptible to floods and cyclones. However, it is also one of the most productive regions in terms of agriculture and fishing. Bangladesh is also one of the most overpopulated countries in the world, with a population of over 160 million people, making it the 8th most populous country on the planet. Its population density is one of the highest in the world, with around 1,265 people per square kilometer. This extreme density, combined with Bangladesh being one of the world's leading exporters of clothing and apparel, presents significant challenges in terms of infrastructure and resources. As you will see next, this contributed to the country becoming one of the most polluted on the planet. The origin of Bangladesh as a nation is relatively recent and closely tied to one of the greatest catastrophes in human history. As you will now see, a monstrous cyclone, known as Cyclone Bola, claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Cyclone Bola struck on November 13, 1970, and was one of the deadliest cyclones in history, killing between 300,000 and 500,000 people in the Ganges Delta region, which today encompasses Bangladesh, then known as East Pakistan. The management of the disaster by the government of West Pakistan, which then controlled what is now Bangladesh, was considered grossly ineffective and negligent. The lack of a quick and proper response to the natural disaster fueled the already existing discontent among the people of East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, who felt marginalized and exploited by the central government of West Pakistan. The perception of negligence and abandonment increased political and social tensions. During the general elections of December that year, the Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and with strong support in East Pakistan, won a landslide victory in the National Assembly. However, the West Pakistani government was reluctant to transfer power. These tensions eventually led to the uprising of East Pakistan and the start of the Bangladesh Liberation War in March 1971. This war culminated in Bangladesh's independence on December 16, 1971, after intense fighting and with the support of India. Therefore, the Cyclone Bola catastrophe had a direct impact on the process of Bangladesh's independence, as it exacerbated tensions between East and West Pakistan and catalyzed the events that led to the war for independence. Bangladesh thus gained its independence from Pakistan in 1971, after a brutal liberation war that left deep scars on its people and land. The rich culture of Bangladesh is strongly reflected in the global textile industry. Bangladesh is one of the largest exporters of clothing and textiles in the world, and its economy depends heavily on this sector. The country also has a rich literary and artistic tradition, with notable figures like poet Rabindranath Tagore, who was the first non-European to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. Furthermore, the country has made considerable progress in areas such as microfinance. The Grameen Bank and its founder, Muhammad Yunus, were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for their efforts to create economic and social development from the grassroots level. This reflects the resilient and entrepreneurial spirit of the country, which continues to face significant challenges and overcome them. Despite these advances, Bangladesh is considered one of the dirtiest countries in the world, and now you will easily understand several reasons for this reality. Bangladesh is known for its abundance of flies, which presents an additional challenge for any tourist or visitor. If you plan to visit, it is advisable to bring insect repellent in your luggage to protect yourself from these pests and enjoy your stay. This situation reflects the sanitation and cleanliness problems the country faces, especially those related to waste management and public hygiene in many cities. The absence of trash bins and the colossal amount of waste are significant issues. Due to the reality that the country is one of the world's leading producers and exporters of clothing, problems like fly infestations and other issues arise, which you will now discover in more detail. Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, is the most developed city in terms of quality of life, but it is also the most densely populated, with around 23 million inhabitants, and ranks among the 10 most overcrowded cities in the world. This large concentration of people exacerbates the cleanliness and sanitation issues. The congested streets and lack of adequate services contribute to the accumulation of waste and unsanitary living conditions, which are directly related to the country's low life expectancy, significantly lower than in developed nations. It is important to understand that Bangladesh is one of the poorest nations in the world, where the majority of people earn less than $1 a day and perform their work in rudimentary conditions. The minimum wage in the country is less than $95, which makes the average income extremely low. This widespread poverty limits the ability of both the government and citizens to invest in infrastructure and healthy living conditions, resulting in an increase in hygiene and pollution problems in the country. Moreover, these low wages make the country one of the places with the cheapest labor in the world, attracting large international companies. Many renowned global brands have factories in the country, taking advantage of these low labor costs. Unfortunately, many of these locations do not adhere to strict environmental standards, contributing to pollution and the deterioration of air and water quality. When walking through the streets of the country's capital, it is common to see people carrying objects on their heads due to the lack of access to vehicles. Additionally, many tangled electric wires on poles reflect the fragility of the country's infrastructure, creating a scene that feels like it belongs to several centuries ago, highlighting the poor conditions in which a large portion of the population lives. Traffic in Dhaka is chaotic, with vehicles constantly moving and little regulation, and pedestrians face many dangers when crossing the streets due to the lack of footbridges or tunnels and the absence of traffic lights in many areas, where traffic flow depends on police direction. Public transportation in Bangladesh is also limited and of low quality. Overloaded, uncomfortable old buses are the primary option in rural areas, while rickshaws are common in the cities. Many of these rickshaws operate without motors, relying solely on human effort. The cyclists, often men showing clear signs of malnutrition, frequently carry additional passengers. This hard work is not only physically exhausting but also reflects the difficult living conditions and the constant struggle for survival in the country. Another striking reality of Bangladesh is the presence of street stalls on almost every corner of Dhaka. While the sale of food products is common, the lack of hygiene is a constant concern that stands out. Moreover, if you come across one of these stalls and decide to eat something, it's advisable to be cautious about hygiene practices. As you may notice, the stalls and their surroundings are often in unsanitary conditions, and many vendors exhibit poor personal hygiene, which discourages travelers from consuming food or drinks for fear of health issues. At this point in the video, we'd like to know if you would dare to eat at one of these street stalls and if you would like to visit Bangladesh. Pause the video and leave your comment, telling us what caught your attention the most. This is the best way to support Mundo Sem Filtro so that we can continue producing interesting content like this. So, thank you. Additionally, the low education level in the country contributes to environmental and health issues. Only 3 out of every 10 people can read and write, which limits awareness about the importance of hygiene and proper waste management. The cities suffer from high levels of pollution, and the presence of garbage is quite common, further exacerbating the challenges Bangladesh faces in improving cleanliness and health conditions. In addition to hygiene and dirt in this overpopulated country, another prominent aspect today is the presence of Islamic practices in local culture. In Bangladesh, the main religion is Islam, with about 90% of the population being Muslim. This predominance is due to the country's history and culture, which were influenced by Islamic conquests on the subcontinent during the Middle Ages. The Bengal Sultanate and later the Mughal Empire established Islam as the dominant religion in the region. The integration of Islamic practices and values into daily life in Bangladesh has endured through the centuries, especially after the separation from Pakistan and the country's independence. One of the Islamic practices still common in Bangladesh is polygamy, which allows men to marry multiple women according to Islamic law. A man can have up to 4 wives simultaneously, as long as he can treat them fairly and equitably. While not all men in Bangladesh practice polygamy, this option is legally permitted and practiced in some communities and socio-economic contexts, especially in rural areas or among conservative groups. In some cases, this allows certain men to marry more than 4 women. In Bangladesh, polygamy is legally authorized for both Muslims and Hindus, although it is subject to specific regulations and restrictions. Islamic law, based on the Quran, allows a man to have up to 4 wives at the same time, as long as he can treat them fairly and equitably. However, to moderate this practice and address the associated social and economic issues, Dhaka authorities have implemented a tax system designed to discourage multiple marriages. The South Dhaka Corporation has established a tax regime that increases exponentially with the number of wives. According to the new rules, a man must pay 90 cents to marry his first wife, while the fee for a second wife is $45, the third wife costs $181, and the fee rises to $453 for 4 wives simultaneously. This gradual, tiered approach to taxation aims to make the practice of polygamy less attractive and harder to maintain financially. The increase in fees has reignited the debate on polygamy in Bangladesh, with divided opinions. Women's rights activists and critics argue that while this measure may reduce the incidence of multiple marriages in Dhaka, it will not fully resolve the problems associated with polygamy or address the inequalities between men and women. Additionally, the lack of legal records for many marriages in the country raises doubts about the practical effectiveness of the tax. Meanwhile, other cities in Bangladesh are considering implementing similar measures with the aim of moderating polygamy without completely banning it. However, there is a scar that no Bangladeshi forgets: its recent history. This scar is linked to the deadliest cyclone in human history and the geographic features of the country. On the night of November 12, 1970, a powerful cyclone formed in the warm waters of the Bay of Bengal. This meteorological phenomenon, known as Cyclone Bola, began to intensify in the depths of a restless ocean, hidden among the currents and mists of the monsoon. What initially seemed like a common storm in the Bangladesh region, a country notoriously known for its vulnerability to natural disasters, quickly became one of the most devastating cyclones in history. Cyclone Bola advanced relentlessly toward the coast of Bangladesh, bringing with it colossal waves and winds with the force of a hurricane, sweeping away everything in its path. The devastation was immediate. Thousands of homes and structures collapsed, submerged by the rough sea and torrential rains. The lack of resilient infrastructure and inadequate preparation for such a calamity contributed to the extent of the tragedy. The population, already vulnerable and unprotected, faced a wave of destruction that left an alarming initial toll. However, the impact of Cyclone Bola was not limited to the storm itself. Widespread flooding and the destruction of homes created fertile ground for diseases and health issues that spread rapidly. The lack of proper sanitation facilities and clean drinking water exacerbated the crisis, leading to the emergence of infectious diseases. Death and suffering continued long after the cyclone passed, with diseases and malnutrition taking an additional toll on a population already traumatized. In the shadow of the storm, Bangladesh faced a tragedy that extended beyond the winds and waves, revealing the fragility of life in an unforgiving environment. These catastrophes are related to the fact that the country is located in one of the most cyclone-prone, earthquake-prone, and flood-prone regions of the world, as it sits at the crossroads of dangerous weather routes. The country's geography, with its vast floodplains and proximity to the sea, makes it vulnerable to these natural disasters. The combination of Bangladesh's low-lying topography and fast-flowing rivers creates an environment where cyclones can unleash their fury with few restrictions, thus exacerbating the disastrous impact of storms. Despite these challenges, the country has ranked year after year among the fastest-growing nations in the world. The importance of its population and the optimistic outlook of many educated and hopeful citizens have fueled a narrative of accelerated wealth and development. However, the reality on the ground paints a much more complex and challenging picture. The high population density and persistent poverty are stark issues. Many people live in precarious conditions and struggle to survive in an environment marked by resource scarcity and poor infrastructure. The paradox of Bangladesh is evident in the contrast between its economic growth and the harsh reality faced by many of its inhabitants. While some enjoy a relatively comfortable life, the vast majority face extreme hardships. In the streets of cities and in makeshift neighborhoods, inadequate housing, lack of sanitation facilities, and reliance on discarded resources reflect the constant struggle for a dignified existence. Although the country is moving toward a promising future, the contrast between progress and persistent poverty remains a constant reminder of the complex reality in which Bangladesh finds itself. This country, often associated with climatic, environmental, and social challenges, also offers natural landscapes that contrast fascinatingly with its difficulties. Among these natural treasures are beautiful tropical beaches and vast forests that provide a more idyllic image of the nation. The most famous of these is Cox's Bazar Beach, known for being the world's longest natural sand beach. Located in southeastern Bangladesh, this beach stretches for around 120 kilometers along the coastline of the Bay of Bengal. It is a golden sand beach, famous for its length and picturesque scenery, attracting both local and international tourists as one of the most beautiful and visited places in the country. Its length and tropical setting offer a unique experience for those seeking endless beaches and warm waters. In addition to Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh is home to lush forests that enrich its natural landscape. The Sundarbans forest, for example, is the largest mangrove forest in the world and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This ecosystem is not only essential for global biodiversity and the health of the country, but it also serves as a vital habitat for endangered species such as the Bengal tiger. As vast expanses of forests and wetlands in the Sundarbans are an ecological marvel that contrasts with the often negative image associated with Bangladesh due to its socio-economic challenges. Another remarkable reality of the country is the presence of many floating villages. One of the best examples can be found in the Barisal district in the southern part of Bangladesh. There, you'll find floating villages built on platforms that adapt to seasonal changes in water levels during the monsoon season, when rivers overflow and the surrounding lands flood. These floating platforms allow residents to continue their daily lives without being swept away by the waters. Homes, markets, and roads are constructed on wooden and bamboo structures that float on the water, creating a unique landscape that changes with the seasons. Life in these floating villages reflects the residents' adaptation to the challenging environmental conditions and is deeply influenced by the aquatic environment. Most daily activities are conducted by boat, from transporting goods to moving people around. In these floating villages, children, for example, must navigate boats to get to school, often on their own. These young ones become skilled navigators at a very young age, using small vessels to cross the waters around their homes and reach school. This situation has led to the development of innovative, adapted solutions to ensure education continues despite the adverse conditions. The way of life in these floating villages has led to a series of unique adaptations. Houses are built on platforms that can rise with the water level, while markets and communal areas are designed to float and remain accessible year-round. Families frequently rely on boats for all their daily needs, including food shopping and household tasks. This way of life has fostered a deep connection to the aquatic environment and surprising resilience in the face of living in a flood-prone region. While life in these floating villages may seem idyllic from an outside perspective, it also presents considerable challenges. Constant reliance on water for nearly all activities and the need for ongoing adaptation to seasonal fluctuations present significant hurdles. Residents must possess specialized skills and knowledge to navigate this ever-changing environment. Moreover, conditions can become particularly harsh during times of heavy rain when water levels may rise unpredictably and cause severe flooding. During extreme flooding, the risk of disease and accessibility to resources can be severely compromised. Nevertheless, the capacity of these communities to innovate and adapt is a true testament to the ingenuity and resilience of its inhabitants. As you can see, Bangladesh has immense natural beauty, even though, unfortunately, its dark past, environmental catastrophes, lack of infrastructure, and cheap labor make this beautiful country one of the most complex and challenging places to live. Bangladesh is undoubtedly one of the most complex places in the world. We hope that this visit to the country has been as fascinating for you as it was for us. Considering the effort we put into creating these videos, we would love to hear your thoughts. Your feedback is the best way to help us continue providing the best content every week. If you liked this video and haven't subscribed yet, don't wait any longer and do it now, activating the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Don't miss the fascinating videos we produce every week. Watch videos like this one and discover other incredible places. Be sure to explore the wonders that these locations have to offer.